Andre. He's been an entrepreneur. I've known him since 2015, I guess. And I had the pleasure to see the amazing path that Inloco took in the past years. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone that was able to come today. This event is organized by the Tech and Policy Initiative, TISA, and Brazil Talk. Just a brief, a little bit about these organizations. The Tech and Policy Initiative at SIPA is a hub for research in the area of technology and policy. So we're bringing together scholars, practitioners, policymakers, and technologists to examine complex questions and reach effective, innovative solutions related to cybersecurity, internet governance, digital economy, and much more things. TISA is the Technology and Innovation Student Association. It focuses on creating a community of students interested in technology and innovation at SIPA. And Brazil Talk is a platform for collaboration that brings together experts and young professionals from Brazil to this kind of discussions, events, and research. Again, I'm really happy to have you here, Andre. I would love to hear for you first a little bit about the technology itself. How do you guarantee privacy? I know a lot of people here are studying privacy and cybersecurity, so it would be amazing to hear about the technology itself, and then a little bit about Inloco's story, your story, and everything you have been doing to fight the spread of COVID-19. And after that, we can open to questions. So if you have any questions before Andre finishes his presentation, you can message on the chat. So just so we have a little bit more organized, and we open for questions after that. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I try to make this more of a conversation, so I'll try to be as brief as possible here to explain what we do. So yeah, starting here, just wanted to provide some context on where I come from and how the company was founded. So I've been working with cybersecurity for a long time, but actually started learning and experimenting with this since I was a kid. So I've been doing this for more than 18 years now. And trying to understand how to break computers and how to make them more secure. So the company started about 10 years ago as a research project when I was doing computer science and I was studying specifically IoT security. And at the time, I realized how insecure those devices were and consequently, the impact that this could have on our privacy, right? So basically, when I was doing this research, I then decided to start like building new type of authentication protocols. So the idea here would be, okay, one of the ways of solving this would be to create new types of authentication that wouldn't be linked to our real identity, right? And that could be one of the ways of solving this problem. So to get to this point, one of the key assumptions was that when we're talking about Internet of Things, we're talking about devices that are everywhere. And those devices in some way, they need to communicate with ourselves, right? So it would be very important to understand the precise location of a user. So it then connects to the devices around them, and based on that, it would be able to authenticate and also personalize the user's experience. So the key assumption in summary was that it would be necessary to have a location technology to do it, right? And at the same time, one thing that we have realized is that location is the type of data or information that it's very unique to us, right? There is no other person on earth that goes to the exact same places as you in the exact same times. So analyzing the location patterns of a user could actually lead to the creation of a new type of identity that, if applied the right way, could actually become a way of authenticating you in devices and applications without the need to disclose your real name, your real identity, right? So those were the two concepts that helped us create the company. But 10 years ago, there was no large-scale deployment of IoT. There was no 5G, and there were no broad discussions about privacy and cybersecurity and all of those topics that today are in evidence, right? So the challenge that we faced in the beginning was we were trying to solve for a problem that most people didn't even knew it existed, right? So we had to adapt, and we had to find ways to finance the company and finance the creation of this platform until we got to the point that we're today, which everyone understands the implications of this, right? So that the way we found it to finance the company was to actually apply the location technology to other use cases. And the main use case that helped us gain traction was on applying this technology for personalization and engagement purposes. So what does it mean? Before getting into authentication, actually our main product was leveraging this location technology to help mobile apps understand the behavior of their users, and based on that, interact with their users more proactively. So what does it mean? Well, if I'm a retail app, I could use this technology, for example, as a way to leverage it for my loyalty program, for example. So if people are coming to my store, I would provide them with points, and those points could turn into offers and things like that, right? Or if I'm a food delivery app and I understand that one of my users just arrived home later than usual, didn't go to any restaurant before, that's probably a good moment for me to engage with that user and send them a coupon, right? So that was the first use case. It grew quite significantly in Brazil. It helped us reach more than 60 million smartphones through the integration with like thousands of mobile apps that use this technology. And then more recently, we finally got to a point in which we could apply this technology for the cybersecurity and fraud prevention use cases, which was actually more of the initial vision for the company. So more recently, one of the things we did was the personalization and engagement use cases. We changed the business model in a way that we're actually giving this away for free. We're letting every developer to integrate our SDK to use the technology for these purposes, and we're not charging them anything, while we are actually now focusing on the use cases in regards to cybersecurity. And those use cases are pretty simple. It goes from the moment you download and register an account on an app to the moment that you do a transaction. So when you download an app, one of the things we do is to first of all verify if the device that is downloading that application is secure, is healthy, right? So that's the first thing we do. The second is, while you're registering, let's say you're opening a bank account through a mobile app, or you're creating an account on an e-commerce app, one of the informations that you usually disclose is your address data, right? And then we use that as a proxy for identity. So we use our technology to prove if that address that is being declared is actually where the device spends most of its time. And then you should mention one of the privacy techniques that we apply to that, because we're able to prove that a certain user lives in a certain address without actually knowing which address is that. And how does it work? Once we learn from your mobile device that, for example, this is my house, right? Because I sleep here every night. Once we learn that, we actually encrypt that data on the user's device, right? So we don't see that information anymore. And when you type your address on the mobile banking app, for example, we also encrypt the same data with the same keys. And then we're able to compare the two encrypted data sets to see if they match. And if they match, we know that you live in that address without knowing which address is that, right? So this is one of the many techniques that we apply to make the location data private, right? So that's one of the things we do on identity proofing. The other thing we do is to prevent account takeover. So for example, if I'm a hacker and I discover your password and I try to log into your account, what we would notice is that my physical behavior is different than yours, right? And then based on that, we would block that access and protect your account. And then finally, the third thing we do on the security space is to identify in real time if a certain transaction is legitimate. And how do we do that? Well, we verify all of the things I've mentioned before. So if the device is healthy, if the recent behavior in terms of like where you spend most of your time matches to the address that you have declared. And third, if your recent location behavior matches to what we know about you from the past. We combine all of those three things with a fourth dimension of data, which is the real-time context, which is, for example, if you're making a big purchase online, it wouldn't make sense to do that from a very unknown location for you, right? If a device is trying to do that on your name and its location is not known to you, that's probably weird. But if your device is at your home, for example, that's probably you, and that's probably a secure transaction, right? Or if you are in a physical store or on an ATM, what we would verify is if your device is close to that ATM, for example, or if your device is inside of that physical store. So basically that's what we do as a business. And to leverage that, to be able to do that, we need to leverage our proprietary location technology, which is what makes it possible. So the technology that we have been building since 2010, it was built, first of all, to work indoors. So it's able to work within a building, within a shopping mall, for example. It's way more accurate than GPS. The average accuracy is between 7 to 10 feet. And it's able to detect like different floors in a multi-story building. And finally, it drains much less battery than the GPS. So in 24 hours, it only uses 0.5% of your battery. So those are the general aspects of the core location technology. And that's basically it. And then comes COVID, right?
Can I, before we move to COVID, Carmen just asked the question about the technology. On the chat, Carmen, do you want to unmute yourself and? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually that corner case of a person that doesn't spend much time at home because I travel a lot, and it actually is able to detect this kind of behavior. So even though you travel a lot, there is always a place that you come back, right? And actually, one of the things we do on the security side is we never make a decision on behalf of our customer. So we never decide on behalf of the bank, for example, like this account should be blocked, right? What we do is actually we provide them a confidence score. So in this case, for example, let's say that you're trying to open a bank account and the address that you declare is from your home, right? We would probably provide a very good score if you are always there, right? But if you travel a lot, the score is probably going to be a bit lower. So that's basically how we deal with this type of information. And if the score is very low, what our customers usually do is they require an additional source of information from the user, so they prove that information. So for example, take a picture of a document that could prove that you live in this address, right? So that's how it usually works.
And the same thing would apply for PO boxes and so on. So an address that you only go, like you don't go and spend any real time there. You just go, you pick up your mail and you leave every so often. And maybe like months if you're traveling. Like for example, I spent 6 months abroad. I would never go back to the address in that period of time, but I might still want to send mail there because I have someone going there and picking it up for me.
Yep.
Would the logic be the same?
Exactly.
I show up there every now and then. Okay. Thanks.
Sure. So yeah, so this is what we do as a company, and then a few weeks ago we start hearing more about COVID, and then we started doing research on. Oh, and by the way, before I get into that, so the company grew a lot in Brazil. Currently, we have about 150 people. And more recently, I moved up here to California, so that's why you see some redwoods behind me. This is not from Brazil, and yeah, we started expanding here to the US. So we currently have teams in Palo Alto, where I'm based, and also in New York, where I believe that most of you are. So yeah, we more recently started building our company over here as well. And then as I was talking, a few weeks ago, we start going deeper on COVID and trying to understand like how does it work? How does this virus spread? And once we understood that this is a disease that spreads between human interaction, right? We understand then that tracking humans' movements would be a pretty good way of mapping how the virus is spreading, right? At the same time, we start seeing a lot of discussions in regards to privacy, and especially the argument that the pandemic shouldn't be the thing that is going to enable governments and institutions to start creating a state of surveillance, right? So we then understand that, okay, we have been working with location technology for 10 years. We have been working with all of the challenges regarding anonymizing this type of information for so long. We need to be part of this. We need to especially prove to the world that it is possible to leverage location technologies in a good way. So that's why we started doing all the things we did in Brazil so far. So maybe I could present some of the stuff that we did. So it is a bit more visual. Can you see my screen? All right, perfect.
Yes.
So the first thing I wanted to mention about is we were seeing a lot of contract tracing programs. Most of them relying on Bluetooth. And I understand that is a pretty good approach. From a privacy standpoint, I believe that the partnership between Apple and Google, at least what they said that they're going to do is pretty good from a technical standpoint. It's still possible to de-anonymize the information, but it's pretty hard, and you would need to be very motivated to do that. But generally, I think it's a secure solution. But one other thing that I understand is that Bluetooth wouldn't be enough for contact tracing. And the problem here is that this virus, it survives for a long time in several types of surfaces. So what this means is that the virus could be transmitted from me to you without actually like us being in the same place in the same time, right? I could have just gone to a store. I could like type my credit card PIN on a credit card machine, on the POS machine, and later you could go to that same place and you could type your PIN number as well, and you could get infected simply by doing that, right? So we understand that mapping the human-to-human interaction is pretty good with Bluetooth, but mapping the human-to-place interaction is not that good. So location technologies would be playing an important part on this, right? But obviously, privacy here is the hardest part, and definitely when we're talking about location, and this is my opinion, location is as difficult to anonymize as something like DNA. Not to say that I already anonymized DNA data, but I'm talking more about the complexity. It's super difficult to anonymize location data, and most people think that's much easier. So for example, if you have like a random set of lat longs, it doesn't mean that much. But when you layer, when you bring a layer of data about the places, for example, then you start having more information about that, and then it starts becoming more dangerous. So that's one thing. One other thing is, for example, if you're able to infer where the person lives and where the person works, that's enough to identify most of the people. If you have some knowledge about the person's routine or some knowledge about that person's life, you would be able to de-anonymize the data as well. One other problem with location is that the data, it's very easily this data becomes sensitive. So for example, if there is a specific healthcare center that treats a specific type of disease and you have location information of people that are going there, you're able to infer that this person has a certain disease, and if that information is handled to the wrong people, this person could have a job denied, or have their like healthcare provider charging more, or many other different consequences. So these are all things that you should be aware of when you're dealing with location data, and most people don't realize it. So this is basically my life for the past 10 years. So we've been through all of those challenges. We figured out solutions for those type of problems. So that's why we understood that we had to play a role during this crisis. So basically what we did in Brazil as a first thing was to deliver what we're calling the social distancing index. Currently, all of the states in Brazil are using this solution. We're basically providing the data for free, as we already have a pretty large user base in Brazil with more than 60 million smartphones. And what this brings is a very simple thing. It's basically we're mapping the percentage of people in a certain region that are leaving their homes. And how are we able to understand if a person left their home? Well, basically, the way our technology works is by understanding the sensors of your phone. So like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, magnetic field distortions, accelerometer, gyroscope, all of the sensors that are available. And once we detect that the sensors that your phone usually sees when you're at home are no longer being seen by your device, we know that you left your home, right? So that's basically how it works. And then based on that, we created this index in which we get to this percentage of people that are leaving their homes in a certain area. So the level of granularity that we're providing information to the governments is on this 400-meter radius, which we're like basically creating a very large grid for the entire country. And so they're able to understand where they should take more action in regards to incentivizing people to stay at home, right? And they're doing that in many different ways. So they're sending like SMS to people that are located in a certain neighborhood. They're sending push notification campaigns through government apps. They're even sending cars with like large speakers on top, announcing to people in that neighborhood that they should be staying at home. So those are some of the things we did. The other thing is we have the push notification product as well that we made available for free to everyone, not only the states, so they could send messages to people in certain areas. The other thing was mapping the occupancy rate in hospitals and using that to predict healthcare shortages. And finally, we have combined this data with the information about new cases. And based on that, we were able to predict the infection curve for each city in Brazil. So now each mayor, each governor has access to information about when is the healthcare system going to get into total collapse, when is the infection curve is going to become critical in my city, right? So that's basically the type of information we're providing to the governments. And all of this, we actually were able to build in less than 2 weeks. And the reason why we were this fast was basically because the hardest part was done, which is the location platform and the privacy infrastructure around it that enables us to build solutions faster. So as a next step here, we already have data from the US. We want to make this technology available over here as well. But the difference is that our user base in the US is much smaller. We have 1.5 million smartphones in the US. So it's not sufficient for us to do all of the things we did in Brazil so far. So the granularity that we're able to provide is only on a state level and on a city level for some cities. So yeah, that's basically what we did. And I just wanted to open for questions, Sal. I think there is one thing. There is a question here in regards to, are people aware that the government have their location data? Yes, first of all, we were very public about this. So the data is not only being handled to the governments, but it's also available for the general public. So we're sending reports to people all over the country. We're working with the press. So the press is using the social isolation index, for example, for their reporting. So first of all, the data is public. The second thing is, obviously we had already this very large reach of people in Brazil, 60 million devices, right? And not everyone is part of this index. What we did was we basically sent to all of those 60 million people push notifications with the question of asking the question of, do you want to contribute your location data for this COVID research, right? So from out of the 60 million, 37.5 million people accepted. And then these are the users that are actually contributing their data to this study, right? So we were very transparent with everyone in regards to this information. And before using the data for a different purpose, we asked everyone for their additional consent. So we already had the opt-in from the users, but for other use cases, right? The use cases for security, for personalization, and all of the other things we do as a company, right? But then we asked for this additional consent so that we could use the data for a new purpose.
I think that was a little bit my question also. I know that when Vivo, which is a cell phone company in Brazil, said that they were giving all their data to the state of São Paulo, some people, I don't think it was a big thing, but said, let's just turn off our phones for 2 minutes to show the governor that he can control us. So how do you, and I know New York City has a lot of data about everything, and they choose not to communicate because people wouldn't understand what they're using for it, and sometimes I don't think they want people to know. But how do you communicate this? And what kind of changes? I think people are more open to we are seeing that people are more open to surveillance during the COVID compared to before. So how are you communicating that? And have you seen changes of behavior from people regarding the surveillance? And because I don't think it's a complex technology. You have been explaining it for us for the past 40 minutes. I don't think the general population will understand what you're doing and how you're guaranteeing privacy. So how do you communicate that? And another question that I have is, why did you choose to give this data for free to all governments? Is it something about it's extremely complex and bureaucratic and almost impossible to do public bidding in Brazil, or what was the mindset behind it?
Yeah, perfect. So I'll start with the last one, which is we basically decided to provide the data for free because of two things. One is basically like the impact that it could have on managing the crisis. Obviously, we know that Brazil is currently going through a lot of political turmoil, but yeah, we just thought it would be useful, and we didn't want it to. First of all, this is not our business, right? We didn't build a company to like sell data to the government or anything like that. We actually built a company to like protect people's devices, accounts, and privacy. So yeah, we didn't want to create a new business model. So that's why we decided to create it just to provide it for free. But also we decided to provide the same data to the general population for free. So we've made the data publicly available. And the reason why we've made the data available was, first of all, to be transparent with the population about like which data is being handled to the government. So that was one. And also to bring the attention that like it's possible to leverage location technologies in a good way. And it's possible to deploy all of the right techniques to ensure privacy. So that was the rationale behind it. In regards to the question of the communication with users, we've had that technology implemented on those devices before because our customers are mobile apps, right? They deploy our mobile SDK on their phones, and they use the technology for different purposes. There are the apps that use it for personalization. To use it for personalization, what you need to do is to get the user's consent, asking if the user wants the content of that app to be personalized based on your location and things like that, right? If the user accepts, okay, the app can use the data for that purpose. We never provide the data to the app. We actually provide like dashboards with the data after anonymizing and aggregating the information. And then they can create clusters of behaviors in which they want to use it to interact with the user, right? So they never see anyone on an individual level. And that's how it works. And then the other purpose, as I've mentioned, is the security purposes. The same happens. So the app is going to ask you, like, do you want to enable this app to use your location with the purpose of protecting your account or preventing fraud, for example? If the user accepts, okay, we then start using this. So to use the data for a different purpose, so for example, for this COVID research, we then It's not like in Brazil, it wouldn't be required by law. Only after the equivalent to GDPR is implemented, which is going to be implemented next year. So by law, we wouldn't be required to do that, but we decided to do it because we think it's the right thing to do. So we basically send all of those push notifications to users, asking if they would enable us to use the information for this new purpose. So that's why we have this breakdown from like the 60 million devices that we have access to the 37 million that are part of this panel, right?
Yeah, we have 3 questions on the chat. I think Carmen's is first. Carmen, if you want to unmute and add something to your question.
You know, the first one she already asked actually, which was the one in regards to address.
No, it's how to manage and communicate that data. I'm sorry, you can unmute that.
It's because there are a lot of other questions on the top.
Yeah, I asked the second question. It's basically around, I mean, I guess you can read it off of there, but it's how do you manage and communicate the biases in the data that you have? 37.5 million is a really impressive number, but you know, considering the country has 200 million people, yeah. I imagine, you know, that data set contains biases. Yes. I would imagine some of those would be towards people who are wealthier, more educated, from metropolitan areas and so on. Yep. You know, I think I've seen on Global, like, or heard about this score of how many people are leaving their homes and so on, which is probably the one that you alluded to. How do you communicate that that number might be biased, especially, you know, against lower income and so on?
Yeah, so we do 2 things. The first one is we say that it not necessarily represents the exact distribution of the population, right? And then one of the things we do is we apply some techniques to normalize the data, reflecting the actual distribution of the population, right? So in this case, we try to make it as close as possible to reality, but we need to be transparent about the fact that we don't have access to the 200 million people in the country, right? So that's how we deal with it. I think there is one more question here from
there are two more questions.
Yeah. So can you explain more how you get the software? Oh, I think I just answered that. If Inloco is being contracted by the Brazilian government while we're providing it for free, the government, no, the government is not our customer. Here we're basically like donating the data for them. The way we see it is that in this case, our customer is the population, even though they're not paying for it. We're using this data for this purpose, so we could enable the authorities to manage the crisis in a better way without exposing their privacy and their individual freedom. So in this case, when we compare this to what is going on in regards to the usage of data from telcos, well, with a telco, you are not going to receive a push notification asking if you want your data to be used for this new purpose. You don't see anything on the contract you sign that this data could potentially be used for this type of situation. It's very difficult for you to opt out. There's a lot of friction, and you would probably need to be without a connection to get to this point, which is not a viable option for many people. So yeah, see that the approach that most of the telco operators are taking is not the right thing. I think that, yeah, people should be aware of what's going on, and they should have the right to accept it or not. That's at least the way I think about it. So there is a question about bias. Competition's landscape. Well, yeah, well, there are way more companies in the location space, and there are a lot of companies actually that are using their location data to help fight COVID. and they're not talking to journalists. They're not being transparent about what's going on, and that's pretty dangerous. Here in the US, I would say that the situation in regards to location and privacy is the worst. Each person has a price. Each person's location privacy has a price in the US. If we would like, we would be able to buy your location data history, your location history, for only 4 cents a month. So that's the price. It's 4 cents per user per month. There are hundreds of companies in the US that sell this type of data, and you're not aware of. The difference here is that, first of all, we don't buy data. We offer services to app developers, and we apply all of the best techniques to anonymize the information. We're transparent with the user. We only collect data if there is opt-in. There is a very easy way to opt out from our platform if you want. It's very easy for you to delete the data from our platform if you want. And it's very easy for you to understand what we do with your data if you want. So basically the big difference between us and the majority of the players in the location ecosystem is that we deal with privacy in a very different way. One other thing that most of these companies do is that they act as data brokers. So they buy data from apps for, as I've mentioned, 4 cents per user, and they resell it to several companies, including even the government buys this type of information. So it's pretty bad what is going on. None of those companies go public. If any of those companies get mentioned in any press article, they don't comment, and they simply don't engage with the press because they know that they're doing a very, very wrong thing. So yeah, our position here is to defend the good usage of location data, but yeah, the competition landscape is pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
And that we have 10 minutes and 3 questions. So if you can read them all in one turn and answer.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, in regards to our attempt to reach lower income, that's pretty difficult because the user needs to have a smartphone and needs to have internet connection. The way we are getting closer to those users is that we've made our technology available for the government so they could install on the government apps. And particularly in Brazil, there are several apps from social programs, which those programs, they reach this portion of the population. So that's how we plan to reach this part of the population. But besides that, it's very difficult. So one more question here in regards to the individual's data. Yes, I've mentioned that the data could be used to prevent fraud at ATMs and so on. So what we do is we're not providing the bank the location of the user when there is a transaction happening, for example. We are only providing the score. So we see the data on an individual level, we process it, we transform it in a score, and we provide the score to our customer. But they never know the location of our user. The same applies to address verification, for example. When the bank sends us an address, we confirm that address, but we never disclose where this person actually lives if that person doesn't live in that address, right? So we're never sending the location data. What we do is we collect the location data, we process, we figure out what is the answer that we are going to provide to our customer. We provide that answer, and actually on our side, what we do is we have a retention policy of only 7 days. So what we do is, if our entire database leaks, we did it in a way that we try to prevent as much as possible for no one to be identified, right? And how do we get there? Well, if our entire database leaks, what we're going to have is basically 7 days of location history from several users, excluding any visit to your home, any visit to your work, right? Because those visits we actually process on your device. It doesn't come to our server. So no one would be able to identify where you live and where you work. So that's first. The second thing is if the data can potentially become sensitive. So for example, if you went to a healthcare center, if you went to a religious temple or anything like that, we don't link that information to your profile. So we're not going to see any of those sensitive places that you've been. So actually the reality is that the only thing that is going to leak out there is information about commercial venues that you've been over the past 7 days. And the person wouldn't even know which exact place was that, because we actually only store the category of the place. So we won't store like you went to the McDonald's on X Avenue Saturday 9 o'clock. No, what we actually will store is you went to a fast food chain this week, right? So that's the only information that is going to leak. And then in this way, like if our entire database leaks, the intention here is for no one to be identified, right? So this is what we do in order to protect people's privacy. And then in regards to the individual information, we only disclose a score, no information about your location or your location patterns is ever disclosed to any customer.
So if you're at the ATM use case then, so let's say I'm at the ATM and I'm trying to withdraw cash and I don't have my phone with me, you would just send a confidence score saying to the, let's say, Bank of America saying, Carmen is at this location trying to get money. The score is like 10% and it would be up to Bank of America to go through and allow the transaction or not.
Yes, exactly. And then Bank of America take a lot of decisions here. One of the decisions could be like,
that's for information, ask me for like details of,
yeah, exactly. Like ask you a knowledge question or so on. So yeah, basically what we do is just provide the score. So there's no information about you. There's a last question here. Given the limited footprint, are there particular areas that you believe are best suited to using the data? Yes, those areas are California and New York. So those are the 2 states in which we have the highest penetration. I think we have about 400,000 users in California and 250 users in New York. 250,000, sorry.
A quick follow-up. Thank you for being here. But are those opt-ins as well? The people in California, New York. So do you anticipate that the tool might grow into in some way assisting with the contact tracing efforts, given that they're opted in? And if you could share how that might be applicable, I'd love to hear.
Yes, for sure. Well, our SDK is currently free right now. So if any of those contract tracing apps would like to use it, they would be able to leverage it. With this, we would be able to bring them this new dimension of information, which is the relationship between people and places. And the way I believe that we could contribute to this is mapping infection hotspots, so areas in which a lot of infected people were before, and then mapping out like all of the people that went there, so we could notify those people as well. So I think it would complement the current Bluetooth-based contact tracing solutions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Our time is coming to an end. Thank you so much, Andre. I'm wondering if, well, we're gonna leave the record online and share with all of you if you wanna watch again. But thank you so much. it is a kind of, we get super anxious talking about this kind of technology. So I'm glad at least one startup is looking for our privacy rights. And I know I've seen how much time and money and talent to invest in guaranteeing that this technology is actually keeping users' privacy. I know that's a priority for you. And I'm really proud that it comes from Brazil. So thank you. And I just want to leave Columbia University's door open for you if you need anything, New York or elsewhere. Just talk to us. We're here. And there's Kinyan's asking if he can follow up questions through email. Yeah, you already sent the email. Okay. I was gonna ask you in privacy if I could share your email.
Yeah. No,
okay.
Yeah. Well, it was a great pleasure to be here speaking to you. I know that location and privacy are two things that usually don't fit very well. So these solutions that we're building are quite counterintuitive. But the way I see it, just to finalize here, is that location data is somewhat impossible to not deal with, right? Because we are going to get into a new phase in which the internet is going to be spread across many different devices that will be spread across many different places. And location will be essential for that to happen in a good way. So actually the way I see it is that it's important for us to build the right tools with location while respecting consumers' privacy to make the best use of it, right? The same applies to all of the other technologies out there, like facial recognition, like voice recognition, like biometry, biometrics, and many others. They could be applied in good ways as long as the applications are built with the right purposes. But obviously, there are still a lot of discussions in regards to regulation that are important here, because I believe that location, facial recognition, biometrics, and many other types of technology should have special regulations, because those are like data points that could very easily become dangerous and for people, right? So I do think that it should be treated as probably like it. If there is a lot of regulation for enriching uranium, for example, there should be a lot of regulation for dealing with location data, because it's not simple. It's not simple, and we should be very careful with this type of technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre.
Right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.